up, everybody? Let's party. We got the slate for the next, 35, 40 minutes. Let's hang out. I'm Adam Kaufman, Reed T. Fowler. We're going to be talking a lot of NFL. Divisional weekend is upon us, obviously. Just a couple of days away, not even 48 hours, although pretty damn close. We got a light slate in the NBA tonight, just a few games. And, of course, the American Express. No, I'm not talking about the credit card. I'm talking about, of course, the golf tournament. And Reed is, he's glued to it. Every time he looks away from the screen, just know that he is checking his bets. He's checking the leaderboard. He is all encompassing the American Express. So, Reed, try and contain yourself. I promise we will get to it.
Oh, when Patrick Cantlay is 9 under through 12, it's pretty captivating stuff, especially when you got some stocks on good old Patrick Cantlay. So, no, it should be a good one. You mentioned Koff. We got some football this weekend. This is probably the best couple of weeks, right, for football. This one and next.
I was going to say, I hope you don't mean last one and this, because my God, Reed, please, just overarching thoughts. Please tell me that these 4 games are going to be better cumulatively, collectively, than the 6 that we got Super Wild Card weekend.
Yeah, I was pretty pumped that the Patriots are who we thought they were. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously. But yes, absolutely. Right. These two, as sans the Cincinnati Tennessee game, are all rematches from games in the regular season. So the 49ers, Packers, Rams, and Bucks played each other in week 3, which we know right early in the season. Now, late in the season, you could have 2 different teams, and namely the Kansas City Chiefs are probably one of those teams, and the Buffalo Bills, they met each other in week 5. So these 3 out of the 4 are rematches from the regular season, and you can glean some information from that week. But like I mentioned, these teams, and especially Kansas City, are completely different than what we saw earlier in the season. So this is going to be better than last week, because last week we had some teams, we had some officiating. I won't get to that because we could spend 45 hours. We could filibuster this show and this channel, Koff, about the officiating over the last 20 years for the Raiders in the playoffs. But I digress, and we'll keep on moving forward.
That sounds like a guy who's very excited for ESPN's Tuck Rule documentary coming out in just a couple of weeks. Very
Whistlegate
excited.
Is my new that's my new hashtag I'm putting on my Twitter bio.
All right, so these 4 games, because why live in the past? We've, as you joked about my beloved Patriots, it's true. It was not a good showing there in Buffalo last weekend. There are several teams, what do we have? 4 blowouts and then a couple of games that were close and wacky. So hopefully we've gotten the pretenders out of the way, and we can look at the final 8, the elite 8 of the NFL going into divisional weekend. It's good to see, obviously, that, and we'll show you, if you aren't looking already, at what some of the spreads and everything looks like on the DraftKings Sportsbook. We've got some projected close games. We don't have any projected blowouts. There aren't any of those 10-point spreads or anything like that, at least, based on what we can expect from an odds perspective. We'll see what the reality is come the weekend. But right now, you got 5.5-point favorites. The Packers coming off the bye. They've activated Randall Cobb. So all is well in Aaron Rodgers' world. He's playing host to the Niners and a banged up Jimmy Garoppolo, who is very, very good against the spread, by the way, in his career. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But then beyond that, effectively you have pick'ems with the Titans favored against the Bengals, the Bucks favored at home against the Rams. And of course, the Bills are underdogs in Kansas City by a couple of points there against the defending 2-time AFC champion Chiefs. So let's just go in order of these games and break them down a little bit, what to expect. Like I said, the Bengals are the first up. In Tennessee, we expect to see Derrick Henry. That's exciting. This is a game with 47.5 points in terms of the over-under. Who do you think is going to win this thing? What do you think of the numbers?
Yeah, starting at the top here at Cincinnati, Tennessee, I think that, there's 2 ways to, there's 2 ways to think about everything. So I don't want to be cliche about that. But like Cincinnati's coming in right now with a ton of momentum. I'm surprised that Cincinnati hasn't gotten more money coming in on the market just because of how popular of a team they are. Steve Buchanan thinks that he'd rather take the alternate line of Cincinnati laying 6.5 points for plus money. That's how confident he is in this Bengals team. But I would say, Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend, because Tennessee potentially getting back Derrick Henry, or even if they don't, even if Derrick Henry is not back, or if he's not 100%, I still think Tennessee was the number one team this season in running the football. So they were establishing the run. Tannehill is great against play action, not great against pressure. But if you look at Cincinnati, they're coming out of that game against the Raiders a little banged up on the D line. Ogunjobi, I think, is banged up. We'll see if he's able to go. And practice reports coming out, probably tomorrow. Yeah, this one's Saturday, maybe today. Or we'll get some confirmation on some of these guys. And, that's going to be a factor. Even Hendrickson, right? They're underappreciated stud defensive lineman. Trey Hendrickson, he was banged up as well. He left the game, I believe. I don't know if it was a leg injury or might have been a concussion. I forget what it was, but he left and he didn't come back in. So that's going to be an issue as well. And the last thing I'll mention about Tennessee's offense, and we know about Cincinnati, right? Their explosive offense, but Tennessee's offense, what they do is they operate across the middle, right? Those slants, those 8-10 yard slants with AJ Brown, or there's crossing routes with AJ Brown and Julio Jones. That's what you do. And Cincinnati's extremely soft and vulnerable across the middle, especially in the pass game, not to mention AJ Brown, his matchup against Eli Apple, which is going to be, advantage Tennessee. So with that being said, I'd much, much, much rather have this under that key number of 3, or just on 3 specifically. This is on the wrong side if you're Tennessee of 3. And if you like Cincinnati, you obviously like that hook. You like 3.5. But I'd rather side with Tennessee if I'm putting a position on this one. I'm not, because I think this one's pretty tightly matched in terms of the line value. But having a bye in the offseason is massive. And when you take a look at what we'll talk about with Green Bay, same as with Tennessee, getting healthy and getting a bye is extremely important this time of the year.
There's also the whole rest versus rust debate. You come down on this time of year that ultimately rest is the better thing.
I think so. Especially when you have an experienced coach like Vrabel, an experienced organization, an experienced player and quarterback like Tannehill. I would say it'd be different for someone like a Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, I take that back because rest is obviously more important for him currently in his condition right now. But it'd be more important for, in terms of rust, of playing, right, of playing, keep on playing, of the guys that don't have a ton of experience, who need those reps in those moments where they're high leverage, and not just players, but coaches especially. And that's what we're seeing too, that if you take a look at the coaching disparity of last weekend's rounds, right, in the wild card weekend, we saw that Sirianni and Cliff Kingsbury, these guys got completely exposed. I think the Patriots just got overmatched, right, from a team that was better than them. And look, to argue, and this is what we'll talk about when we get to the Bills.
I think Bill Belichick was outcoached as well, though.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, though, right? Like the Bills, when you take a look at how they're coaching throughout the year, even going back to last year's playoff appearance against Kansas City, they've changed. And Brian Dabble and Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, on the defensive coordinator side, they've changed their approach, but especially on the offensive side. So coaching really, really matters. And that's where you take a look at some of these experienced teams where rest, and not just rest, but time to prepare, benefits these teams more.
Hit the like, hit the subscribe button on the DraftKings YouTube page if you're watching along with us. If you have any questions, obviously YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, wherever you're finding us, we're happy to answer them, help you make some bets, help you set some lineups, whatever we can do here as we wind down the work week leading into divisional weekend. Talking about this first game, the Bengals and Titans, how much does the Derrick Henry factor weigh for you when you're looking at the total, when you're looking at the spread, when you're looking at the money line? Is Derrick Henry the difference in your mind, as well as you hit on this, as well as the Titans ran without him? And arguably, I mean, statistically, they ran better. Not that I think they have a better back than Derrick Henry, obviously, but they ran the ball better without Derrick Henry than they did with him. Maybe just because they used some fresher legs. They diversified their backfield. They didn't lean entirely on one guy. It was more of a sort of community feel, and that it worked out for Tennessee, obviously. But how big a factor is the Henry factor in terms of who wins and who loses this game?
Well, it's big because, Derrick Henry, a lot of people will say, well, it doesn't really matter. No, it does, right? It definitely matters because Derrick Henry is arguably one of the best running backs in the NFL, in modern time because of his size. Is he the best and he's the best for fantasy too, right? I was about to say, is he the best for fantasy? Yes or no? That's probably not a debate either because the guy scores a touchdown. So real life and fantasy running back, he is one of the best. And up until this point, he's been pretty sturdy, right? And pretty, especially ascending when a lot of other players and teams are descending in terms of their health and their ability to be 100%. Derrick Henry was that guy who always ascended at this time of the year. So it definitely makes a difference. And on top of that, even though from a statistical standpoint, Tennessee was running the ball more and better, it doesn't matter from the defensive side, right? The defenses aren't going to be scared of Donta Foreman beating them. They're not going to be scared of any of the stable of running backs that can beat them. Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter, when you got to tackle that guy, or you know that he's getting the ball and you stack 9 in the box, he's still getting 5 yards. So it's the matter of staying on schedule if you're an offense, as opposed to like, if we don't get this, if we get first or second down and long, right? Do we have to chip away and make sure we get 3rd and 6, right? If a pass doesn't work on first down for Tennessee, we're like, oh, we'll just give the ball to Derrick Henry, he'll pick up 6, and it's 3rd and 4, which is much more manageable than 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 for Tannehill to try and get the ball to these guys who have been injured this entire season and the receiver. So it definitely matters from that perspective.
We talked about this time last week when obviously it was the Raiders Bengals, and we both said, that we wouldn't be the least bit surprised if the Raiders went out and actually won that game. And certainly they put up a fight. They, you could very easily argue they had just as good a chance to come away with the win as the Bengals. Ultimately, It was Cincinnati. It was the Bengals' first playoff win since the Bush administration, the first one, by the way, not the most recent one. It had been a while. It had been 3 decades. I don't know. I don't even think it's I was going to say, call me crazy. I don't think it's crazy. I like the Bengals to win this game.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy at all. Look, they've covered their 5-0 in their last 5 games, covering ATS, and they're 4-1 straight up, right? And the teams that they face, look, you can argue that the Broncos, the Ravens, the Chiefs, which officiating did play a part in that one. They lost to the Browns in week 18, but they didn't play their studs. And then they beat the Raiders by 7. And so, from that standpoint, they're a team that this is what needs to happen too, Koff. And if they can get up early, if Cincinnati can get up by 14 points, 10 points very early on, but especially putting up 2 touchdowns, then that changes what Vrabel and his offense wants to do, which is run the ball, control the clock, and win the possession game and turnover game. If Cincinnati comes out and Chase, who's done amazing against good teams, playoff teams in this season so far, if they do that, then yeah, you're gonna love Cincinnati, because if they get out early, then I don't see Tennessee really being able to keep up with them and come back in those games without Cincinnati also being able to put up more points.
Is there a particular prop, just scrolling around the DraftKings sportsbook here, that you like from this game?
I think you got to take Jamar Chase, all of his props. And I know that's generic, but I'm like I mentioned,
76.5 is the receiving prop. The number of catches right now, 5.5.
Yeah, that just seems a little bit absurd. Right? 5.5 catches for Jamar Chase. He's their best player. He's their best player in their team right now. And like I mentioned, in playoff teams, I think he's got 9 touchdowns against playoff teams this season and close to 900 yards. So, and don't quote me on those stats, but I think those are fairly close to what he's done as a rookie. So remember way back when this guy couldn't catch the ball? Now he's, arguably one of the most exciting, if not for Devontae Adams and some of those guys on the Kansas City side, one of the most, exciting receivers in the playoffs right now. I know Stephon Diggs is still there, but Jamar Chase can break a game wide open, and they give him the ball on these bubble screens and he can take it, 80 yards. He can get you 8, 9, 10 yards. So I think you have to feature him, and that over 5.5 is really nice. But yeah, I just think you got to give him the ball.
All right, let's just in the interest of time and keeping things moving, because we've got you for another 20, 25 minutes or so. Let's go to that other Saturday game. And that is, of course, the Niners and the Packers. Jimmy Garoppolo, he's banged up, but he is expected to be out there as things stand right now. They are, of course, 5.5-point dogs in Green Bay. 47, very similarly, is that total going in. Just looking at it earlier, and we had, Garoppolo 13-5 outright, 14-4 against the spread in his career as an underdog. That is the best winning percentage by a QB as an underdog in the Super Bowl era, including the playoffs. That is according to someone who covers gambling for ESPN. So you like Garoppolo to go out there, cover a spread again?
No. Look, if he was healthy on a neutral field, right? If he was 100% healthy on a neutral field, then maybe I would say, yeah, I think they got a shot. Then they got a shot to win the game if that's the case. Like I was bullish on San Francisco last week and they panned out. I've been bullish on San Francisco all throughout the January essentially to get into the playoffs. But now you're coming into you're running into a buzzsaw, which is Aaron Rodgers on rest in Lambeau Field in the playoffs, Devontae Adams. And on top of that, your boy, which is weird to say because he was in New England, but he didn't get any PT, hasn't played a game ever in his career under 32 degrees, ever. And now you're going to Lambeau where it's going to be 8 as the high, I believe. And you got a bum shoulder and a bum thumb on your throwing side. If that's the case and it's Trey Lance at some point, look, Green Bay has not been great against rushing quarterbacks this season, but those are the likes of Lamar Jackson, right? That's not the likes of Trey Lance. And I got a lot of stock in Trey Lance in terms of dynasty teams, looking at him for next year's futures in terms of what he can do. I'm all in on Trey Lance. Not yet, though, and not against this team. I already picked this up at 6. It's come down to -5.5 for Green Bay. So if you like that under 6, then absolutely. And if you like San Francisco, I would wait until you hear news about Bosa, about Fred Warner. I was trying to check if there were any practice reports that are coming out. And I did see that Nick Bosa was stretching with the field or with the teammates while Jimmy G was warming up. And I think I saw Rappaport's tweet yesterday that said Jimmy G is going to play, but not at 100%. And if that's the case, I just don't see it happening against Aaron Rodgers. And if what I think San Francisco is going to want to do is rely heavily on the run, if that becomes successful, if their run game becomes successful, I really like this over at 47. Because,
well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they're scoring because they're running the ball, right? Like we kind of saw against Dallas, and they're efficient with the ball running, I am extremely confident in Green Bay coming back and scoring very quickly. So if that's the case, I could see easily this game being, in the high 20s, 30s by the end of the first half, if that scenario plays out where San Francisco is successful with the run and they can run on Green Bay because Green Bay's run defense isn't great. The only thing is, you're not going to know that until you're watching the game, right? Is how are they playing? So maybe this is a wait and see in terms of the total for a bet. But right now, pre-game, I like Green Bay.
You got Aaron Rodgers, 261.5 is his passing total right now. Garoppolo, 231.5. And I guess that seems like a fair number for Garoppolo, especially with the uncertainty of the shoulders you talked about. For Rodgers, I don't know. I think Green Bay is going to win this game for a number of reasons. And I do ultimately think the Packers are going to cover. I don't know. For me, it's, and I talked a lot about this throughout last year as well. There's a little bit of just the little stroll down narrative street when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. What I think is interesting is sort of his evolution. Like last year, it was sort of the, it was the bleep you tour in the wake of Jordan Love being drafted and all the, frustration with the organization. And now we've sort of evolved into the, not to say he's not still upset about certain things he is, but you factor in so much of what has gone on in these lengthy sort of mind-bending interviews that he's done with Pat McAfee among others throughout this year. We've evolved from the bleep you tour to the no bleeps given year for Aaron Rodgers. I just think he's going out there and playing with a certain freeness that we haven't seen from him in a while, that I just think, I know like that doesn't go out and win the game, but I think it speaks to, this is a guy he's been there so many times before. Like there's no anxiety, there's no nerves, there's no, letdown. There's, I feel like there could still be a little bit of some of that, under the skin stuff with Jimmy Garoppolo. I know he's been to a Super Bowl, but as a younger quarterback, especially dealing with the injury, Rodgers at home in the cold, very familiar environment, very familiar setting. It's a healthy team that they've got there for Green Bay. I think they're going to win this thing going away.
Yeah, by margin, right? Like I agree. His prop right now, you see it, Aaron Rodgers is 2.5 touchdowns at plus 160. I mean, this guy has hit this over on the closing line 11 out of 15 times, where he's thrown for more than 2 touchdowns. So this essentially is saying he's going to throw for 3. So for spotting Aaron Rodgers 3 touchdowns, which is pretty safe to say, or the Packers 3 touchdowns, 14 to, let's just call it 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
What can San Francisco do to come back? And look, what I worry about too is, I mean, Devontae Adams torched the 49ers their first time out.
Which is why his number's at 94.5 going into this game.
I mean, like they just know where to put this guy against this defense. Josh Norman, I'm sorry. You were great once, but not anymore. Mm-hmm. Manuel Mosley is fine, but like this secondary is already banged up. MVS is not playing. Randall Cobb is coming back. Another guy that I really like is Allen Lazard in this game, especially if MVS is out. Allen Lazard is going to get single coverage. I'd rather take him as an anytime touchdown at plus money. I think it's like plus 150 something, 157 for an anytime touchdown for Allen Lazard. And I think that's a pretty decent bet, 175.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a lot of, guys out there, but let's say, if we're giving Aaron Rodgers 3 touchdowns, like 2, I mean, at least 1 can't go to Allen Lazard. I think those are pretty good numbers, especially with MVS being out and Randall Cobb coming back for his first game after abdominal injury. That's like, I could never imagine. And if I had abdominals, I would never imagine what that injury would feel like.
I can tell you this, it would be uncomfortable, like getting up from a lying down position on the couch, let alone going out there and being hit by 300-pound men
degrees.
In a professional football game, 8-degree weather. What a mess. Well, let's build off that. Let's continue talking about this Saturday slate specifically and look at the NFL's $3 million fantasy football millionaire contest we've got in the DraftKings lobby for you. It is $20 to enter, $3 million in prizes, $1 million to first place, and of course, that coveted Tournament of Champions entry ticket. Now, this particular tournament, it's not Saturday specific. It covers all 4 games, but if we're just analyzing Saturday to begin with, and we'll get back to Sunday, we'll return in a few moments. Obviously, I'm looking at some of the projections right now. Devontae Adams on that Saturday slate specifically is the projected high scorer, even higher than the quarterbacks. We do have Derrick Henry in projections that I'm looking at, as he's projected for right around 20 points as compared to Adams' 21. Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill, they're all in the neighborhood of 18, 19 points. But, we're sitting here talking like we think Rodgers is going to crush that. Is he ultimately the best value quarterback available to you?
Probably not. I mean, Joe Burrow at 66, right? Like I mentioned, you have to kind of factor in. I mean, yes, like I like Aaron Rodgers a ton at 71, but I'd rather go with Joe Burrow at 66. You see the type of games that he's had leading up into this one against Baltimore and Kansas City, putting up 37 plus points. I think that's what you're going to have to do if you're Cincinnati's. You're going to have to get out quickly, right, and get ahead of Tennessee so they can't run the ball. And if that's the case, it's a lot of Joe Burrow passing it. The Jamar Chase, the T. Higgins, to CJ Uzoma, who looks like a man possessed out there. And look, Joe Mixon has always been a little bit dinged up, a little bit banged up. We'll see if he's going to be 100%. No one's 100% coming into this, but I kind of like Joe Burrow in this matchup, especially because everyone is going to be flocking to those first 3 guys, even Brady, right? A lot of people are going to go to Brady as well. But I just think when you look at the roster percentage, it's not going to be on Burrow for obvious reasons. And even if they're down by a lot, right, which, again, a lot of people potentially might think, Joe Burrow is the guy that's going to be passing it quite a ton.
What about in terms of, obviously outside of the quarterback position, guys that you think are good pay down options? Because there are so many, especially because all 4 games are available to you. There are so many good, expensive plays. When you start to get a little cheaper, just Saturday specific, guys that jump out at you. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Again, non-quarterbacks. T. Higgins is 5,700.
Yeah.
George Kittle at 5,300. Eli Mitchell, Tyler Boyd. Boyd is 4,800, although he's very obviously boomer bust. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at just Saturday, I mentioned Allen Lazard. He's someone that I like. That's probably the one game that I would want to go from a cheap perspective, because I think when you take a look at the the other three teams, I think, they're fairly, I mean, like in Tennessee, I'm not really confident that you're going to get a spike performance from one of those guys that's not AJ Brown. Like, I don't think Nick Westbrook, Akine is going to be someone that is extremely factored in. So Lazard at 4,400. I mean, look at his targets over the last 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty nice at that price tag. And if you take away the week 18 when it was just him and it wasn't, they weren't really playing for much, he still has a pretty good clip of returning value, at least at a 3x, 4x multiplier. So Alan Lazard is definitely there. And if we go to Sunday, it's probably the Tampa Bay side, in my opinion. But in terms of Saturday, I think Alan Lazard is probably my favorite.
We had a question in the chat, our buddy Sean Preston asking about the Lazard receptions prop in this game. And so let me pull that up for you real fast. You can join in Reed's party. 39.5, obviously the yards, and the receptions 3.5. So especially as Sean notes, and you hit on this as well, if there is no MVS, 3.5 is, I'm not going to say it's safe necessarily, but I mean, it's a number you feel pretty good about.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is like the yards too. If you look at his game logs, he gets some of these deep passes too, right across the middle, or Rodgers hits him across the seam and he's got 20, 30 yard receptions. So you could hit this over in 1 to 2 plays.
Yep.
Or you can be like me where Dallas Goedert gets 14 targets, has 5 catches. You have a 5.5 prop out there.
Yeah.
And you essentially hit 5 in the first half. And then you wait to the fourth quarter with 7 minutes left to get that last reception. You can do that. Or you can just go the anytime touchdown, which I think I know touchdowns are extremely variant, but the plus money is definitely there. If not, then I like the other stuff as well.
We've got you for another 10, 15 minutes. Get your questions in, of course, before the next Madden Sim starts up at 6 Eastern. Of course, we've got the Rams and the Buccaneers. Now, on the one hand, the defending champions, Tom Brady has never lost in the playoffs as a member of Tampa Bay. And, I'm not sure he's ever lost in the divisional round for that matter. I'd have to look it up. And then, the Rams, the sort of darling, whatever word I'm looking for, but everyone's favorite Super Bowl pick going into the season. Now, obviously, going up against as tough a challenge as you'll find there with the Buccaneers. We'll see what we wind up getting. Like I said, essentially a pick 'em. It's 3-point Bucks being favorites. 48.5 is the total between these two teams. Which way is this thing going to swing? Are we going to see Matt Stafford and company actually get that win?
This is the hardest game to handicap, I think, because neither of these teams showed us really or anything, or needed to show us anything last week.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so what did Stafford throw 18 times, 20 times? And Philadelphia didn't show up at all. They were just overmatched. Jalen Hurts did not look like he knew which direction was up, down, left, or right. Nick Sirianni didn't know what, he wanted to establish a run down 47,000 points in the third quarter. So I don't really know exactly what you're going to get. Having said that, I lean Rams, and here's why, Coffee. You had some injuries on the offensive line for Tampa Bay, right? Tristan Wirfs, I don't think he's going to be playing. And that's massive. This is the first game he's going to be missed. He's going to miss all his entire career. And Jensen, their center, also got banged up as well. He came back in the game, but when you have that up against Aaron Donald and Von Miller, who looks revived, that's going to be tough. And what Tampa Bay does is they blitz a ton. They blitz the most out of any team. Todd Bowles likes to bring the pressure with his linebackers, and Matt Stafford destroys the blitz. These receivers are going to be essentially one-on-one. If you double Cup, then you're leaving OBJ one-on-one. If you double OBJ, you're leaving Cup or Van Jefferson one-on-one. And all of those guys can beat their matchups, right? Tampa Bay, and I heard this, I forget where I heard this from, but it makes a lot of sense. Tampa Bay keeps their cornerbacks on an island. And that's the last thing you want to do against these receivers, is that. Cam Akers looks really good, looks explosive, but it's more so about the Rams offense matching up against that defense, which is in its current iteration right now, right? For all intents and purposes, a team that is, a unit that is probably on the decline from where it started in the season. Having said that, you got TB12 on the other side of that on your team, and you're never really out of it. I don't think Stafford is necessarily going to be put in position. And that's the one thing that scares me is that didn't it feel like McVay didn't want Stafford to screw it up? like in that game, it was like, okay, pass it. Yeah, here's some easy passes, but like, don't like, I'm not going to even put you in the position to throw an interception. That worries me a little bit because if you need him to, like I know get him his first playoff win, but that's the one thing that scares me is that we didn't really see anything from Stafford because we didn't have to. They were blowing out the Cardinals early. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, like you said, it was the same way with the Bucks and handling the Eagles rather easily. You just lean on those other teams to go out and beat themselves in spectacular fashion if you're Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, who I thought had a real shot at winning that game going in. In fact, I picked them to win that game going in. And
you did, huh?
Yeah, it was not was not pretty. If you're looking at, I've got the receiving props up here on the DraftKings Sportsbook at Cooper Kupp, who just continues to, it was invisible in the first half of that game. Again, Stafford barely throwing the ball, but he also wasn't really catching what was sent his way. 100.5 100.5 is the line going into this one. Real. I got to tell you though, if I'm picking a favorite here, the one that I would be most inclined to want to invest in, it's Tyler Johnson at 31.5. I just think the expectations are so high that, well, Brady's going to be looking at Evans. Obviously, he doesn't have Godwin. He doesn't have Brown. Gronkowski's going to get up a ton of attention, being the Brady binky that he is, and 63.5 is not a number that scares me away. But who else? Where else is he going to be looking? And as appealing as the Cam Brates of the world are, I think Tyler Johnson is 31.5 is. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes away with 40 or 50.
Yeah, but you're going against Dante Dion, who's not a terrible cornerback in dime packages. He's, I think, ranked 38th in terms of 117 slot corners, which is pretty dang good. And, when you look at just the matchup in Johnson, he's not a great receiver. And that's the thing that you take Brady and all the, and I get that. But, if I'm looking at a prop, it's Brashad Perriman.
Yeah, not on the board currently.
On the board. Yeah. That's the one guy that I think, like, Jalen Ramsey is going to be on Mike Evans, even if, you don't think he is. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe people are not thinking about it because Tom Brady, if they need to pass and they need to keep up with these guys, it's not going to be Gronk as much as we think it's going to be because he can't stretch the field. Brashad Perriman can.
What about the 100.5 for Cooper Kupp? How do you feel about that number?
Boy, it's very jarring to see 100 on a prop.
It really is.
But look, at this point, it's hard to I would just stay away.
Yeah,
because I would never want to bet the under on Cooper Kupp because you're going to be sweating the entire time. And look, they pass to him when they're up by a +4 differential. When obviously they're down, they pass to him a ton. They kind of use him as a pseudo running back, right, with those sweeps. So I would just stay away. But it is jarring to see.
All right, we've got a few more minutes. Let's make sure we get to our last game, which we could spend an hour on all by itself, and that is the Bills and the Chiefs. This is, this is what the people called for last year, and not as much this year because both these teams were really up and down. But last year, when they were both cruising, it was like the collision course. These are the two teams. They're destined to meet in the AFC Championship game. Well, in this case, obviously, this year we're getting them in the divisional round, but it's good to see the matchup in part because the Bills. They were built for this matchup.
Yep.
Their roster was constructed specifically to face Kansas City, which, if Josh Allen and company can orchestrate this win, this, very minor upset in KC, then good on them. I worry about them a little bit going forward because they are not facing another Kansas City. But how does this thing play out, you think?
Very competitive. Very, very competitive. You take a look at this matchup last year, Kansas City put up 38. Buffalo put up 24. I think Josh Allen had a pretty abysmal game, if I'm remembering. He threw for 287, but he got sacked 4 times. He threw an interception. He rushed for 88 yards, but he only had, 2 touchdowns? So it's not bad, but Mahomes had, 325 for 3 touchdowns. So, to your point, right, is the Bills were meant now to play Kansas City in this matchup. That's how they fashion their defense. That's how they fashion their offense. They have all-pro DBs in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, who can guard the Travis Kelce's of the world. And when you look at how Brian Daboll called the game against the Patriots, even though the Patriots were never really in it, they were calling, pass plays on first down, positive plays in early down and distance, switching up play calls to really, confound the Patriots defense. And you look at how the secondary is built, even in this matchup earlier in the week, like I mentioned, Koff, they called these games really, really well. And I think that's what it's going to come down to, right? Is we can all put these players up against each other pretty equally. It's going to come down to coaching. And I have a little bit more faith in which is weird to say because Bieniemy, Andy Reid, they've been together for a long time. Spagnuolo, I worry because he likes to send a lot of blitzes, and that's not what you do against Josh Allen. But I have a little bit more confidence in the Bills coaching staff than I do in this specific year than Kansas City. Having said that, it's just under a field goal for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
That is scary. So my advice is if you really want to bet this game, I think, it's fine if you wanted to go either side. I'm probably going to have a slight lean to the Bills, but wait till it potentially late money. What's going to happen to you? This is the last thing I'll say about this because I know we're running short on time. Is that wait until don't place bets on early on this. Wait until if you're a Kansas City fan, right? So much money is going to come in on this game on Sunday because it's the last game. These lines could move a ton.
Sure,
they can move a ton. So if you're on Kansas City, bet them now. Or if you're on a team, bet them now. But if not, just wait because there's going to be a lot of movement come Sunday because people are probably going to be trying to hedge their bets.
Very quickly, give me your 4 money line winners here.
My 4 money line winners. Okay, I'll go Tennessee at -170. I'll go Green Bay -225. I'll go Rams +115. And I'll go Bills +105.
I'm just gonna flip you on the Bengals and Bucks, but other than that, we're in agreement. It's gonna be an interesting weekend. Obviously, should be fun. We encourage everyone chase that $1 million in the Tournament of Champions ticket as well. We didn't have any time to get to the 3-game NBA slate, but I will tell you because you guys often ask in the chat.
Porzingis.
Just a favorite play tonight. Look, Porzingis in a really good spot, no doubt about that. A favorite play tonight. Torrey Craig for Indiana.
Oh.
Torrey Craig for Indiana is in a very favorable position. You should roster him tonight. Probably be pretty popular, but I think he's going to be great. If you want a secondary one, how about JaVale McGee? JaVale McGee there for Phoenix is in a really healthy spot as well. And I hope all goes well for those of you out there that place bets or made lineups for the American Express, including, of course, Reed T. Fowler. For Reed, I am Adam. I'll be back with you tomorrow with Bukes with LaMarca. Should be fun. Thanks to Drew, our technical director, Eamon, our producer, and everybody enjoy the Madden Sims. You got another one coming your way in seconds. We'll see you later.